Benji's dad bought a house, 2 cars, and raised 2 kids on 1 salary, with no college degree, and no debt. Now here is what you are probably assuming. You are assuming his dad made good money, that he was a manager or a specialist, or someone who climbed high. Or maybe you are assuming he just got lucky, bought at the right time, caught a wave. Neither is true. Benji's dad was not special. He was not a genius. He had no rare talent, and he earned an ordinary wage doing an ordinary job. And that is exactly what makes this so unsettling. Because Benji is more educated than his father. Benji works longer hours than his father. Benji is more productive than his father ever was. And Benji cannot afford a fraction of what his father had. So the real question is not, why was his dad special? His dad was not special. The real question is, what changed in the economy itself, in a single generation, that turned an ordinary life into an impossible one? Once you see the answer, you cannot unsee it. If this video is about to explain something you have felt for years but never had the words for, hit subscribe. Because this channel exists for exactly that feeling. Let's start with the house. Here's the fact. In the early 1970s, the median American home cost around $25,000. Now, your first instinct is to laugh at that number. $25,000 for a house. You are assuming that just proves everything was cheaper back then, so the comparison is meaningless. Cheap house, cheap era, case closed, but that is the wrong way to look at it. And here's why. A price on its own tells you nothing. What matters is the price compared to what people earned. And the median family in that era earned around $10,000 a year. So the house cost about 2.5 times 1 year of income. Hold on to that number. 2.5. Because for decades, the rule financial advisors used was that a home should cost about 2 to 3 times your annual income to be genuinely affordable. Benji's dad's house sat right inside that safe zone. On 1 income? Now here is today's fact. The median American home now costs around $416,000 against a median household income of about $83,000. That is a ratio of 5. It was 2.5. Now it is 5. It didn't just rise, it doubled relative to income. And that $83,000 usually takes 2 people working to earn. Benji's dad hit that safe ratio alone. For Benji to hit it alone today, he would need to earn over $160,000 by himself. He doesn't. Almost no one his age does. So the house, the single biggest purchase of a person's life, quietly doubled in cost relative to income in 1 generation. But that is only the first thing that changed. Next, college. Here is the fact. When Benji's dad was young, a student could pay a full year of tuition with a summer job. Now, you are probably assuming that is nostalgic exaggeration, the kind of thing an older relative says. I worked my way through college. Surely rounded up, romanticized, not literally true, except it is literally true. Public university tuition in the 1970s ran a few $100s a year. A teenager mowing lawns or flipping burgers over 1 summer could genuinely cover it. That was the real math. And here is what changed. Adjusted for inflation, college tuition has risen more than 300% since the 1960s. Not 30%. 300. The summer job that used to buy a year of college now buys about a week of it. A degree went from a minor expense to a mortgage-sized debt that follows people into their 40s. So Benji did the responsible thing. He did what everyone told him to do. He went to college because he was told it was the road to the same middle class his father reached without one. And to walk that road, he took on debt his father never had to imagine, which means Benji did not start adult life at 0, the way his dad did. He started below 0, in a hole. Paying interest before he owned a single thing. Now put those two together, because this is where it turns brutal. Benji's dad, no student debt, 1 salary that bought a house, a straight line into the middle class. Benji, tens of thousands in debt, 2 salaries that can barely cover rent, running flat out just to stay in place. Same country, 1 generation apart, a completely different game, which leads to the question that should be making you angry by now. If Benji is more educated, works harder, and produces more than his father ever did, Then where did all that extra value go? Here is the fact. Since the 1970s, American worker productivity has climbed dramatically. Workers today produce far more per hour than workers did 50 years ago. Now, you would assume the obvious thing. More productivity, more pay. That is how it is supposed to work. You produce more. You earn more. That is the deal everyone believes they signed up for. And for most of the 20th century, that deal was real. Productivity and wages rose together, locked in a straight line. Workers produced more, and they earned more, year after year. Then, around the 1970s, the two lines split apart. Productivity kept climbing. Wages flattened. The extra value did not vanish. Value never just vanishes. It went somewhere. It simply stopped going to the workers who created it. So Benji generates more wealth than his father ever did. He is just no longer the one who receives it. This is not a story about Benji being bad with money. It is a story about where the money goes, and the money stopped flowing to people like Benji right around the time Benji's dad was buying his house. Now the detail that haunts people the most, the one income. Benji's dad supported a family of 4 on a single salary. His mom worked only if she wanted to. And here is what you might assume. That this was some 1950s luxury, a rich family thing, not the norm. Or that families back then simply went without, lived tiny, owned nothing. But that is not it either. One ordinary income ran an ordinary household because each income simply bought more. Today, in most families, both parents work, and it is still not enough. Sit with what that means. We went from one income comfortably carrying 4 people to 2 incomes straining to carry the same 4. That is not families getting greedier. That is each paycheck buying dramatically less. When Benji's mom joined the workforce, the household should, in theory, have had double the earning power, double the money. Instead, housing, healthcare, education, and childcare all rose to swallow that second income whole. The second paycheck never became breathing room. It became survival. And here is the cruelest twist, the part almost no one notices. Once 2 incomes became normal, prices adjusted to assume 2 incomes. Housing especially is priced by what buyers can pay. When most households had 1 earner, homes were priced for 1 earner. When most households had 2, homes were repriced for 2. So the second income did not make families richer. It reset the starting line. And Benji cannot opt out. He cannot choose to compete in his father's one-income world because that world priced itself out of existence the moment 2 incomes became the standard. So let's go back to Benji's question. What changed? Here is the honest answer. Nothing dramatic. No single villain. No one moment you can point to. Just a slow, steady, decades-long split between what things cost and what people earn. Housing doubled against income. College tripled and more. Productivity and wages tore apart, sending the value Benji creates somewhere other than Benji. And the second income, which should have made families richer, was quietly swallowed until it became the bare requirement to stay afloat. Benji's dad was not special. That is still the part that gets Benji. His dad did nothing Benji is not doing. He simply did it inside a narrow window of time when the math still worked, when one ordinary income still bought an ordinary life. Benji is doing everything his father did, and more. He just walked into the same store 1 generation later and found that everything on the shelf had quietly quadrupled while the paycheck stayed almost exactly the same. So the next time someone tells Benji his generation just needs to work harder, budget better, and skip the coffee, he is not going to argue. He is just going to ask them one thing. Explain how his father, who was not special, who did not work harder, who did not budget better, bought a house, 2 cars, and a summer vacation on 1 salary, with no degree and no debt. And if they cannot explain that, then they cannot explain anything. Because Benji's dad never had a secret. He just had an economy that has since disappeared. If this hit something you have felt your whole life, subscribe. There is a lot more where this came from. And share this one, because someone in your life has been made to feel like a failure for struggling in a game that was changed on them. And they deserve to know it was never their fault.